Welcome to another episode of the Daily Reset. We love it so much, we wake up at 5:30 in the morning to do it. This week we have been speaking about beliefs. I believe, which is also a belief, I believe that identity and beliefs are two of the most powerful domains you can influence when you want to take your life in any particular direction. Unfortunately, much of our identity is given to us already preformed. You don't get to choose your name, you don't choose the family you grow up in, you don't choose the order of birth, you don't choose the kind of characteristics that people ascribe to you. By the time you know who you are, they have already concluded that you are quiet, or you are loud, or you are sweet, or you are zealous. Some of those attributes, they are suggested by how people act around us. If I were to go by the identity that I picked growing up, especially around my family and especially the extended family, I would be probably one of the most quiet people you would ever meet. And I grew up believing and holding on to that identity, suppressing my own voice for a long time, to the extent that in high school and in university, and even in my early career, I was avoiding some of the leadership opportunities that came my way, just because I picked this identity. Same thing with beliefs. The identity comes prepackaged with a set of beliefs about what you can do, what you can't do, what you should be capable of, what you are allowed to do, what you're not allowed to do, how you are not allowed to speak, how you're allowed to speak. These are all beliefs and identity, the whole complex that comes to us. The Bible says that when I was a child, I thought like a child, I spoke like a child, but now that I am a man or woman, when we get to the point where we are, this is the opportunity for you to define what will belong in your life, to decide what fits your journey, fits your pathway. I want to share with you a small story. I have up to today about 7 books, 7 manuscripts written. And don't ask me why they have not been published until you hear the story I'm going to tell you. This particular manuscript, I had written the entirety of it. In fact, there are some stories in there that I have never been able to get back. I finished writing this manuscript in 2014. It was in my laptop, and I had had it printed so that I can go through it line by line, highlighting and tweaking some of the segments. But no matter how much I worked on this book, I never felt like it was already good enough to be released. To the extent where I ended up releasing my first book, which is called Bold Grasp, before I released this book. And then as it happens, I had gone to Parklands in Nairobi. I went to Parkland Sports Club where the Toastmasters Club I belonged to used to meet. I finished the meeting, and I was meeting somebody in town. And so I headed down to town and went to Sarova Stanley to meet this person. And I waited, he showed up, we sat down and had a meeting. And then I left him seated there. I went to the restroom. At the time that I went to the restroom, he decided to go and pay his bill, the bill that we had had that evening. And when we both came back, my laptop bag had disappeared, together with my laptop, together with everything else that was in there, including a copy of John Maxwell's 15 irrefutable laws of growth, and that manuscript. I could not believe it. Of everything that was in that bag, including the laptop and all the pictures and files that were in there, the one thing that I felt the loss of was the manuscript, because of how much effort I had already put in that manuscript. But then to think about it, I started writing this piece in 2010. At the end of my internship at Kikuyu Hospital is when I started writing this manuscript. And I had been working on it throughout. I left Kikuyu Hospital, I went and worked at Machakos General for almost a year, went to Acacia Medical Center, went to AAR, worked at Nairobi Hospital. This entire time, I am focused on producing as good a manuscript as I can. And so I kept working on it and working on it and working on it until it got stolen. After it got stolen, I felt the loss, but then I discovered that I had a copy of that manuscript saved on my email. And wonder of wonders, by the time I'm discovering this copy on my email, I had already made peace with having lost that manuscript. So what did I do? I deleted it. I deleted that manuscript with the intention of beginning to write this story afresh. Because if it is my story, it should be able to live in me. I should be able to bring it back to life afresh. I should be able to rewrite it. I should be able to give it a new title. I should be able to give it new life. And in 2018, in March, I decided I am going to write that book, the new manuscript. I wrote that manuscript in a span of 3 weeks. And I was writing it that quickly because in June, I would be leaving for the US. And I wanted to make sure that this work that I had put so much of myself into would remain behind tangible. And that work is what became Born to Win, which is my second book, which is essentially my memoir. Why do I tell you this story? I don't think I could have released this book within the timeline that I released it if that thief had not promoted my previous manuscript to freedom. If he had not stolen that manuscript, I would probably have been stuck to it. And the reason is that I had become so enamored, I had become so absorbed and so stuck to the version that I had written that I had lost the ability to see the story with fresh eyes. I lost the ability to relate to any of the characters in the story with a fresh perspective. I had become so used to the structure of my sentences and some of the paragraphs, even the title and the subtitle of the book, the idea I had of the cover, it had become almost affixed. I was literally just painting the corners without changing much of the substance of that book. And when I think about that book today, what the question that comes to my mind is, why was I so stuck? Why did that manuscript have such a strong hold on me? Is it because I had become so identified with it to the point that any change in the manuscript made me uncomfortable? I don't know about you, about your life, about any areas that you're stuck, but my question to you is, what are you holding on to that is holding you back? What are you holding on to that is holding you back? What are you holding on to that is holding you back from moving forward? What are you holding on to that is holding you back from rising to the next level? What are you holding on to that is holding you back from creating something fresh, something new, something different? What are you holding on to that is holding you back from the opportunities you deserve? What are you holding on to that is holding you back from the identity you can create, a new, fresh, more expanded, freer, more beautiful identity, unshackled of all the past baggages? What are you holding on to that is keeping you stuck in the environment where you are in the mindset that you have right now? What are you holding on to that is sabotaging your capabilities, sabotaging your talent, sabotaging your obvious opportunities, that is blinding you even to the simplest tweaks that you can begin to make in your life to move you to a new environment? What are you holding on to? What relationships are you holding on to that you need to let go to go on? What mindset are you holding on to that's keeping you blind even to your own brilliance, to your own abilities, to your own uniqueness? What story are you holding on to that is keeping you in high school, keeping you in college, keeping you in primary school, keeping you in long gone relationships? It's keeping you in broken engagements that are all long gone, keeping you in situations that never lasted enough to warrant to still be occupying space in your present consciousness. What are you holding on to that is keeping you in pain that is keeping you in hurt, that is keeping you in regret, that is keeping you in guilt? What are you holding on to that is keeping you in stagnation? One of the concepts that we spoke about previously in the month of March about some of the mindset shifts that we can make to move forward, I gave you the acronym UNSTUCK. And I believe if you apply this paradigm, the framework of getting unstuck, if you truly apply it, it can help you get unstuck. I do not know whether to thank the thief or not, but in some ways, I am grateful that he stole that manuscript. He should have stolen just the manuscript, not along with the laptop, but you don't get to choose what you get. He took everything. But he took everything and allowed me to create room to write something new. The cover I had in mind was nowhere near what the cover of this book ended up being. The plab I had in mind for this book is nowhere near what this plab ended up being. The content I had in this book was nowhere near what the content of this book ended up being. That was a manuscript probably 3 times this size, but it ended up diluting the story such that the audience I was trying to reach to probably would not have been able to read the entirety of the book because it was going to be too long. Number 2, it had a plot that I had become so enamored to, but it was a dysfunctional plot that had no clear direction. That once I decided to start it all over, I had a clear idea of where to go because all the work I had done had prepared me to see the story with fresh eyes, but I was holding on to the manuscript that was holding me back from the next manuscript. Whatever you are holding on to, when you write down and explore and journal, you will find 1 or 2 things that you are holding on to that create the most weight for you, that are the most dysfunctional, the most hurtful of everything else. And once you identify the core things, if you begin to working with one main obstacle, you will realize that you begin to find freedom in all the other areas. For me specifically, when it comes to writing, ending up writing this book, Born to Win, the previous title was something very different. It was not as positive as this. It was not as short. It was not as clear as this. It was more clever, but which was not going to resonate with a lot of people. But I couldn't see that. When you begin working on your major obstacle, when you uncover it and start working on it, you're going to see your life with a new pair of eyes, with a new depth of awareness. So if you remember the framework I gave you, unstuck, where each of the letters in the word unstuck are part of the framework, where unstuck, the U stands for uncover your obstacle. Uncover your obstacle. For me, in terms of writing this story, the obstacle was the story itself. And it was the version of the story I had written. Is it possible that the version of the story that you have lived before is the obstacle to the story that you need to write? Is it possible that the mistakes you made before have become a barrier to the brilliance that you can unearth today? Is it possible that the failures you've had before have become a reason for you to sabotage yourself so that you don't experience any other failures? And yet, all your brilliance, all your growth, all your expansion, all your progress, any next level you'll ever go to requires that you take action, and you take action expecting that you will face some failure. Uncover your obstacle. I don't know what your obstacle is. It's going to require that you dig deep to uncover your obstacle. Once you uncover your obstacle, U is for uncover your obstacle. N is for narrow your focus. Narrow your focus. In which ways is this obstacle holding you back? When I discovered that the main reason why I was stuck in the old manuscript is because I had started seeing that story with a fixed mindset, that's when I realized that I needed to delete even what I had saved in my email. Are you looking at your story with a fixed mindset? Is it possible that you've ignored all the ingredients involved in any of the painful events from the past and you're only looking at them from one perspective? Despite the possibility of a lot of beauty in each of the stories, each of the situations, each of the encounters, each of the events, you have narrowed it down to the point where you're only seeing the negative aspects. Is it possible that you are no longer able to see your story with fresh eyes? That's because you are so stuck to the version that you have written, the version you have lived, the version you have seen in other people's faces, and you've heard in other people's voices, and you have overheard in other people's gossip about you. That version that you have suspected might be in other people's minds, might it be that you need to narrow down your focus to just that story, just an aspect of your story? Is it your failures? Is it your opportunities? Is it your personality? Is it your character? Is it your voice? Is it your movement? What is it that makes you most unsettled about yourself? Narrow your focus. That is N. Uncover your obstacle, narrow your focus. S is strategize solutions. Strategize solutions. If you would like us to talk about this, we can create a full separate session by itself to talk about what are the solutions. The metaphor of letting go of the first version of the story and writing this new story helped me in huge ways in transforming several areas of my life. I have shared here before that I decided for 5 years I was going to do public speaking with no script. And that ends this year, 2024. And that's one of the changes I decided to make. Because I decided I am not going to become a speaker that is beholden to a clutch. I want to show up just as raw as I am, make the mistakes I need to make, but knowing that the skills I develop, the ability to articulate myself on the go will serve me someday in the future. What solutions do you need to strategize? Do you need to intentionally give yourself permission to show up as the raw version of you without any edits and just show up expecting to be uncomfortable, anticipating that you'll be uncomfortable, but realizing that that discomfort is part of the journey that you have to walk to the other side? All your growth is on the other side of discomfort. All your growth is on the other side of uncertainty. All your growth is on the other side of trembling, but still speaking with your voice, even if all you can do is whisper. Strategize solutions. Solutions to rewrite your story. Solutions to create a new environment. Solutions to break through regardless. Solutions to do whatever it takes. Not just to try your best, not just to see how it goes. Show up and do whatever it takes. You do whatever it takes because 20 years from today, you'll be 20 years older. You'll be 20 years older. How old will you be 20 years from today? If you don't do anything today and it's 20 years later and you're feeling exactly as you're feeling today and you're 20 years older, how much harder do you think it's going to be to deal with that situation? Might that be a reason enough by itself for you to do whatever it takes? Because 20 years from today, you don't want to be where you are today. 20 years today, you don't want to have the same story you have today. You want to have written a new, fresh story. A story that is unshackled with whatever has happened in the past. A story that you sit and start writing now, and which it actually takes you shorter, because now you are no longer shackled by the weight and the structures and the fixed character of the past story. The next story can be as flexible as you make it because it is your story. Uncover the obstacle, narrow your focus, strategize solutions, and T stands for take action. Take action. In 2010, you said you'll do it in 2012. 2014, you said you'll do it in 2015. 2023, you said you'll do it in 2024. 2024 is here. Might this be the time to say no more next year? No more next time. That this is the year to take action, to take uncomfortable action, to take action when you are not feeling ready, to take action when you don't feel certain about the outcome, to take action because it's upon you, the buck stops with you. Uncover your obstacle, narrow your focus, strategize solutions, take action. After you take action, the next step in Unstuck framework is unwind and run the tapes. If you are not as young as my students, my high school students, you know those tapes we used to use a pen and you put it there and you run it like this, you unwind it. After you unwind it, then you run the tape. In other words, you play it all over. Review what you have done. What obstacle did you uncover? What focus did you choose? What strategies did you select? And what actions did you take? What results are you getting? So you run the tapes and see, is it working? How is it working? Why is it working? Why is it not working? What else can I try? You run the tapes, you reflect about that process. And this is where most of the juice, most of the insight, your own wisdom, this is where it lives. If you take action without unwinding and running the tapes, which is essentially reflecting, you miss out on your own wisdom. So you only get the experience, you only get the pain, you don't get the learning that comes from your experience. Unwind and run the tapes. Unstuck, UNSTU, the C stands for calibrate and celebrate. Calibrate. If you have unwound and run the tapes and realized what actions worked, what actions didn't work, you figure out which actions you need to go deeper and harder on, which actions you need to be quicker with, which actions you can eliminate and narrow your focus a little more on the actions that actually work. The calibration helps you figure out what direction you're going and celebrate every small step you take. Celebrate every victory. If you said you will show up and you show up, you deserve to acknowledge yourself for showing up, because you're showing up for the next level you. You're showing up to overcome. You're showing up to rewrite the story. You're showing up to rub off everything that is on the canvas and start painting a new masterpiece. And you have the power to write and create and design and carve and generate a new masterpiece, to write a new story, to own your story. The last letter in Unstuck is K. You keep going. My challenge to you is to give yourself a specific timeline. My recommendation is 90 days. 90 days of working on one obstacle. 90 days of working on one obstacle, and work on that obstacle as though you want to learn everything you can about the obstacle so that you can teach somebody else. And that means sometimes when you are reflecting, you speak about it out loud to yourself. Ideally, find somebody else or some other people to keep sharing the insights you're getting. But most importantly, when you sit down to reflect, don't just write, actually speak out whatever is coming out. Because there is a reason why we are sent to school and somebody stands at the front of the classroom and speaks to us. There is nothing as powerful in terms of shaping our mindset as hearing what we hear. What we hear is, a lot of the times, it misses out on the visual element, but what we hear captures your attention because you are thinking about it and you are hearing. So you are utilizing more than just one faculty of your brain. So do not just read it out loud. Just read it out quietly. As you write it down, if you write it, that's kinesthetic, and you are seeing it, that is visual. You speak it out loud, that is auditory, and you're thinking about it, that is mental. You are engaging 4 faculties at the same time. Sometimes when I have a speech I need to prepare, even if I don't have a script, when it's a new subject, I will just sit down and hear myself talk about it, some segments of it loudly, just verbalize and see, is that a good speed? Is that a slow speed? Is that okay? And then I just let it go from there. It is unbelievable what your mind can reproduce if you do it, when you do this kind of work with a focused attitude. I don't know what your obstacle is. I don't know what you're holding on to that is holding you back from what's next. Maybe it's your story. Definitely it is part of your story. You can decide today as we come to the end of the breakthrough challenge in a couple of days, you can decide today that it's time to let go of the old story and write a new story that you had never even foreseen. And you write it. I wrote this entire book in 3 weeks. I saw it from the editor only 2 times. The initial time to go through the initial edits, and the second time to look through and just approve it. And we could have done a much deeper work in terms of editing, but my focus was just to release the story. But the main thing, the reason why I tell you this is just to see that that story that I stayed stuck with from 2010 all through, that this I could have been done with this story long ago. I stayed stuck with it. What I was holding on to was holding me back from what was next. If you choose, you can let go of what you are holding on to that is holding you back from what's next. And the power is in your hands to choose. I hope you will choose to let go of what you're holding on to that is holding you back.